Good morning, all of you. Pleasure to be back in NASSCOM. And this is a very interesting topic, and I could really think of nobody better than the global CEO of Honeywell to talk about it. Why am I saying this? Because if you look at this $35 billion corporation, 60% of their R&D spend is today on ESG. And ESG is very fashionable today in India, of course. But I think it's important to remember that it's a serious opportunity. So many of us entrepreneurs who are looking at moving from the traditional IT services success story to products, to deep tech, etc. I want you to hear from Vimal, what is the big opportunity coming in because of sustainability, net zero, and other areas, which could be actually a sunrise industry for the entire tech sector in NASSCOM and in India. So let me first start by introducing Vimal, and I think Vimal, of course, served as the MD of Honeywell Automation India Limited, which I have the privilege to chair today. And of course, today is the global CEO of Honeywell Corporation and based in the US. So Vimal, first tell us a little bit about what we should know about sustainability. I mean, we're all hearing net zero, every boardroom conversation verges around ESG, etc. So what's your feeling? I mean, is it for real? Are companies and countries really taking it seriously at this point of time?
So thanks first of all, Ganesh, for having me here. I would say that this is a topic which is talked a lot and probably not very well understood, to be very candid. The scale of problem is pretty significant, specifically to solve it. To put things in perspective, the word growth is directly linked to energy consumption. So when we grow, any country which grows, it consumes more energy. And developed nations were lucky to have no constraints when they grew. So think about Western Europe, where the industrial growth happened, and then followed by US and others. The growth, that created a lot of pressure on the climate, and the climate has come to a point of not able to sustain it. So we have to undo what was done in last 100 plus years in 20 years. So if using coal or using fossil fuel in every part of our life was a way of life from, say, early 1900 till today, we have to undo that by 2050. So you have to do at 4 times or 5 times the pace, and that's the scale of the problem. So human ingenuity and innovation have to come at that level of pace. So to me, therefore, the problem solving is extremely complex. To your question, is it really, do we have plans? I think every company is now, in my view, is going from thinking about it to how to do about it. I think it's more, and there people are realizing the challenges which exist because doing energy transition or climate or net zero is extremely difficult. It's probably the largest problem our generation will solve, and if we don't solve, we're definitely going to create problem for the next set of generations.
So Vimal, I'm a great fan of the Simon Sinek approach to solving problems, which is ask those 3 questions of why are we doing this, what do we want to do, and how are we going about it. And as you rightly said, people are now grappling with the how. But tell us a little bit about what Honeywell is doing, because you obviously have a huge investment in traditional technology, traditional plants, manufacturing, etc. So what is it that, when you're looking at 60% of your R&D being in sustainability and ESG, what are you really doing? What's the $35 billion company looking at when it says sustainability and ESG?
So to think about sustainability, I think to put it in a more simplistic manner, we always explain that there are 2 parts of the puzzle to be solved. First is energy efficiency, and second is the energy transition. So energy efficiency means you consume less. If you consume less, then you have to transition less, because transition is very hard. So first part of our solutions really focus on energy efficiency measures, which will start from having the right measurement systems. Because one of the challenges, it's hard to even define what's the current energy, the emission standard or emission level of any company. When somebody says, I want to be net zero relative to what? What's your current baseline, and how do you know it's 100, it's not 90, or it's not 110? So the problem first starts on the measurement system itself, because most of the measurements today are manual or derived. So establishing the real-time measurement is our first goal. That, followed by energy efficiency measures, whether it's in industrial plants, whether it's in buildings. So many of you who run offices, I think you have to ask a question to yourself, is my building the most efficient building? Is it taking all energy efficiency measures? The simple ones are known, like are we using LED lights, for example? It's an easiest energy measure, but there are many such energy measures you can take to reduce the energy spent. The first is measure and reduce it. That's the first part. Relatively easier, I would say, and it is like a low-hanging fruit, the fruit lying on the floor. And we do a lot of work in that area. The second is a harder part, which is the energy transition. And energy transition, the way to think about it is that we all know about clean energy or green energy. We all know about solar and wind. And that can be a big part of transitioning this planet to more sustainable. Honeywell doesn't play in solar or wind power, but our primary focus is hard-to-abate sectors because electrification cannot solve the problem of sustainability of the entire planet. It can solve a lot of problems, but it cannot solve all the problems. So the areas we focus upon is hard-to-abate sectors like how do you decarbonize air travel, for example. In any country, air travel typically in a mature state consumes about 4% of emissions. So India will soon reach there with the amount of planes which are going. Now, planes cannot run on battery. At least there's no such technology available. So how do you decarbonize that? So you need to build sustainable aviation fuel, which we do. That's an example. If you want to decarbonize sectors like steel and cement, which are necessary for growth of India, how do you decarbonize steel manufacturing? How do you decarbonize cement manufacturing? What are the technologies required? And there you need alternative fuels like hydrogen and carbon capture and utilization. We focus on those areas. Other areas we focus on is something which is not talked quite extensively is everybody in the room probably knows CO2, and CO2 is very harmful. What you must also know is that there are gases even more harmful than CO2. Methane is 25 times more harmful, and fluorinated gases, which are 100 times more harmful. So when you turn your car air conditioning on, you are polluting the air immediately. The moment you turn it on, because it uses a molecule called hydrofluorocarbons, HFCs, which are 100 times more polluting compared to CO2. So you have to know that when you turn it on, that's what you're instantly doing. So there are methods available to decarbonize that. There are alternative chemical molecules available which will substitute that and not pollute the planet, to put it in a more simplistic manner. So we are focused on hard-to-abate sectors: transportation, heavy industry, air conditioning, and these are extremely difficult problems to solve. I would say probably we've solved 2/3 of them. One-third of them are yet to be solved, and that's what we are committed, and that's why we spend a lot of our R&D spend in this area.
And tell us a little bit about, because as we all know, Prime Minister Modi has committed that India will be net zero by 2070, which seems to be a long way away. But if you talk to the people who are really working in this area, they know it's a long climb ahead. But if you were to look at Indian policies in this area, and obviously Honeywell has a very large stake in what you do in India, and I would think that, if any of you are in Bangalore, try and get a chance to see the Honeywell Technology Center in Bangalore. It is absolutely outstanding in terms of the technology investments in aviation and a whole bunch of areas. And if you look at that and say that, look, you look at India as a country with so many consumers and so many potential polluters of the air, are we heading in the right direction? Are there any thoughts that you have on how companies can do ESG more thoughtfully and how the country itself can take sustainability more seriously?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say that first of all, one thing we have to realize that every country has to build their own sustainability strategy or sustainability path. Why is that? Because the energy consumption pattern of every country is unique. Because energy sources are unique. Like India is blessed with sun. If you live in Norway, you don't have much sun, so they can't use so much of solar power. So the first and foremost is that what India is doing well. Let's talk about that. I think the India mission to use clean energy, wind and solar, is absolutely in the right direction. The commitment to use 50% of energy in future from cleaner sources is a big effort. By any dimension, it's monumental. That's very positive. Way to replace fossil fuel by promoting EV cars or using more ethanol into fuels is a great move because you are replacing more lethal fossil fuel with more friendly options. Or even, I would say, the large replacement of use of LPG in home instead of burning wood is a big step forward. So nobody should undermine what has happened by any dimension. It's not easy. whatever government has done, it's extremely difficult and it's being done very efficiently. So that's a positive need on the positive side of the ledger. On things to be done differently is the kind of things I talked about before. Hard to abate sectors, technology is evolving. And forming a policy on how to deploy these technologies is a point of evolution in every country, which includes India. So how to frame policy to use sustainable aviation fuel. There's a hydrogen policy, but hydrogen is not yet available, so how will it really scale? More clarity is required on that. How to deal with the methane emissions, how to deal with fluorinated gases emissions. So I think all that policy, and I would even argue that how to even build standard for emission monitoring, because all of us have to feel responsible that we need to measure. What you can't measure, you can't control. We all do that in our jobs. So if you can't measure emissions, you can't control it. So what are the standards for that? So I think there is a lot of positive work done, but on the other side of the ledger, there's a lot more to be done over a period of time.
No, but that's an interesting point you make because, I mean, as all of us know, the government has a strong focus on EVs. And in fact, I myself chair the STP's COE on EVs, which is based in Pune. And we're seeing tremendous traction from entrepreneurs, primarily on two-wheelers and, of course, in technologies and charging systems around EV. But one stark reality is that lithium-ion batteries are still largely dependent on China, and we have our own issues on that one. And, of course, the green hydrogen, as you said, while there is a huge government policy for green hydrogen, it's still some time away as a maturing technology. So are there any shortcuts, or is Honeywell doing something that the government should look at, which we can see as a possible fast track to being more sustainable?
I think, look, that's a challenge in energy transition. There are no shortcuts here. Yeah. There is no pathway. So lithium-ion batteries are good for concentrated energy storage, right, which is in our cell phone. It was not designed for large-scale energy storage. It was not intended for that. So there are no shortcuts available to find something. It's going to take time to find alternative methods for energy storage. The short answer is, with the diversity of technology, it's like any other strategy development to say, here are the choices you can have, and what choices we can implement successfully in India quicker because of the resources we have and options we have. And I think that's where the companies have to take a choice. That's why I'm a big fan of energy efficiency. I think energy efficiency can typically deliver up to 15% reduction in energy consumption. By the most standard. You can do higher too. And if we adopted energy efficiency seriously in every aspect of our life, that reduces the problem by 15%. That's massive. And putting more effort on that is obvious. And then you, of course, make your other choices, like using EV cars, is an interesting choice. But one has to remember that if you are charging your EV car in the night, and if power is coming from a thermal power plant, you're polluting the planet more. So this equation is extremely complicated. Just because you buy EV car, you're not depolluting the planet. You may be polluting because you're using an air conditioning, which is bad. You're charging with a thermal power, which is bad. But it will evolve. The power will become clean and we'll use a better modes of air conditioning. It will evolve to the right thing. But we have to be conscious of, my point being, we all have to understand this subject very deeply to make an impact.
Okay, finally, Vimal, probably the most important part of this discussion is the opportunity for all of us in this room. I mean, as all of us know, if India has really excelled in one thing today, it is UPI. And UPI started with the whole JAM Trinity, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, mobility, and I think our own very good friend of NASSCOM, Nandan Nilekani, actually made that happen. First with Aadhaar, and then making UPI go totally mainstream. I'm sure there's nobody in this room who doesn't have a Paytm or a Bharat Pay or whatever for payments. And I think that's amazing. And today we are now looking at education, skills, the circular economy, everything happening through platforms. So is there some kind of a platform play that Indian companies, Indian entrepreneurs can invest in, and they can really be thought leaders in this whole environment?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I would say, as a born and raised in India, you really feel proud whenever you come here on the digital enablement. Living in US, you just feel you probably are living in a little bit of stone age in many parts of life in terms of digital transactions. It's a truth. So I have to admit what's the truth there. I mean, the ability to pay over UPI instantaneously is outstanding. We don't have such system in US, so you have to schedule your payment through bank. It can take 48 hours just to pay from one to another. So don't take things for granted. There's a lot of good stuff happening. So I think digital adoption, UPI platform, Aadhaar platform, they've been outstanding. But let's talk about the point, Ganesh, you made about, I think this sector has to really about, we talk about fintech a lot. You know, the climate tech is probably 10 years away, but we need to start thinking about it today. So what is going to be climate tech? If you think of any company, and let's say that any organization has to abate its carbon emissions, and they find pathways to do, say, my emissions are 100, I found a way to reduce up to 80. And 20 I can simply not find. There's no technical path available. It's not possible. So what do I do if I have to commit to neutrality? I have to buy some credits from somebody who has it available. So it means somebody's planting trees, somebody's putting renewable power, and they have access, they are decarbonizing planet, so I have to buy from them. So it becomes an exchange of a transaction between buyer and a seller. And as every organization, big and small, becomes more and more aware of carbon neutrality, this exchange becomes a way to do that. The forcing factor of that goes the carbon tax. Many countries already have a carbon tax. The smaller countries are evolving. It means that if you emit carbon, you have to pay tax to the government. So that becomes a forcing factor to neutralize yourself. The challenge comes is now it's like any other exchange. So fast forward 10 years from now, when multiple people are trying to trade each other, how do you do that? And the challenge is not only the transaction itself, but the efficacy of the commitment being made by other party. What do I mean by that? Let's say I come to you to say, I'm willing to sell you carbon credits because I have a lot of trees in Brazil. How do you know I have trees there? What's a proof point? And if it's not true, it's a false transaction. Even though I did it, it's not true a transaction. So the complexity of this becomes more and more complex as it scales. And the good news for India is there is no such exchange which has been created at scale anywhere in any country, because every country is starting this game of climate change. Every country is at parity. This is a unique situation where nobody is ahead. Some countries are ahead, but they are much smaller. But if I talk about bigger countries, think of United States, think of China, think of India, the countries which have large population and the large emitters, they are at the same starting point. So this technology intervention is not only critical for the success of the own country, but a technology which is highly transferable, because it's a tech which will eventually have to enable the last mile of energy transition. So I'm personally quite excited. I think there are some early signs of such exchanges being developed in the US at a very small scale. So those of you who are interested, you can search it. You can't use the word Google it anymore after ChatGPT, so have to be careful. You don't use that. So search it and figure it out. There are instances, but I'm personally convinced that's how, and I've, after having met with a lot of leadership of Indian government, there is a bill coming for carbon tax regime in India too. I mean, I think government is thinking progressively. It's not going to immediately applicable, but building the structure around it. So the elements of that are already being put in place. So that becomes a seeding block that makes people aware that someday this is going to happen. And then the transactions around it on driving trade, which I talked about, eventually become enabled.
No, that's actually fascinating because, I mean, the next big thing we're all talking about, and in most of my boards we're engaging with, is the ONDC, which is the Open Network of Digital Commerce. And what you're really saying is you can actually build platforms where you can trade a tree in Brazil for some pollution you're doing here. And that could be a phenomenal platform to create. Okay, we'll stop here. And if we have a few minutes left, any questions you have on circular economy, sustainability, the Indian opportunity, do feel free to ask. I know it's a tough topic, so let's see who's brave enough to ask a question. Somebody ask me? Right at the back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Mr. Kapur, how do you get a mammoth like $35 billion revenue to really go towards innovation for sustainability, and because most of these innovations will not even make a small dent in your sales. So, how do you really convince your understudies to really get it going?
No, I didn't hear the question.
No, he's saying that with a large corporation, 35 billion, why would this be important to you? Because your investors may say, why are you wasting your time on this?
For a company like us, it's a business. We're a public company, so everything we have to say have to have a viable proposition. So we believe, as a company, our future is tied to building propositions which are going to decarbonize the planet. So we are putting a big bet on it. That's what we do. And but you're right. Everything we do has to have a value proposition, and somebody has to pay for it. So we are absolutely not doing it free.
No, but I mean, just to clarify, I think this is one company which is completely committed to these solutions. So whether it's building solutions, process solutions, IoT, the whole business is to make sure that it is as carbon efficient as possible and building a sustainable planet. So I think there are a lot of companies which will emerge, which will really take this as a key theme. And while today it might seem a big investment in the future is going to come at us faster than we think. So I think that's where the opportunity is. Yes, please. There are a lot of hands going up now. I'll leave it to the organizers to tell us when to stop. So there's a couple of hands up there.
Hi, this is Rajesh here. I have a quick question on, are you building any products around ESG?
Products, there is no one product. I wish there was one product which can decarbonize the planet. If there's one, I'll buy that. We have multiple offerings, as I said, which starts from, how do you measure, how do you reduce energy spent. So this is, I'll have to probably take a day to explain the number of products we have in this space. There is no one single product which can solve it. If somebody is telling you that, that's the biggest con which exists. There is no such one product.
Is that something that you really like and would like to share with us? Any product that you really love from your...
As I said, focus on energy efficiency. All of you should know your carbon footprint. What's your personal carbon footprint? How much of carbon you create every day, and focus on energy efficiency. That's my always first ask. I think we can spend a lot of time to talk more complex technologies like hydrogen or sustainable aviation fuel or carbon cap. I'm not, given the background of this audience, I'm not going to bore you with that. But think about the simple basic. If you are living in a building, what's your carbon footprint and how can you reduce it? That's something we can all do without much challenge.
And that's
time.
It. Yeah.
Yeah, we have one lady asking a question, so maybe we should let her do it.
Sorry, one last here. Hi, I'm Vibha. I'm from Colgate. Slightly longish question.
Keep it short, rapid fire only, no long questions.
Okay. Do you think recyclability is helpful to reduce the damage that we've already caused? Because aren't we too late? Because new non-renewable sources of energy still get created at large scale.
No, recycling is a big part of the solution. One of the technology we promote is plastics recycling. We all use plastic in our life. Plastics are an integral part of our lifestyle. We cannot undo it because everything we use is some form of plastic. And you can collect plastic and recycle it to again produce plastic. So that's recycling. The problem is how to collect plastic, separate it from waste. Not many countries have been able to do that successfully. And if you can solve that issue at a city level, technology is available to recycle it and bring the plastic circularity back. This is something is possible, but this is part of the point I was making. These issues will all take time to resolve. Technology exists, but separation processes don't exist. So there's always work to do. But we provide technology today if somebody wants to buy.
Thanks, Vimal, and thank you all. And I'm sure there are multiple questions and will keep growing as the years pass by. So feel free to write in and tell us what you need to know.
Thank you so much, both of you.
For more interesting content, like, comment and subscribe to our NASSCOM YouTube channel.